This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Atom Audio, Isotope, Native Instruments, Lewitt, and Grace Design. You're hearing my voice right now on the Lewitt PureTube microphone through the Grace Design M201 Mark II mic pre mixed through Isotope, RX, Ozone, Neutron, and Nectar, all on Atom Audio monitors. Please check out our awesome sponsors using the link in the show notes below. It's a great way to help support this show, and there's some great deals waiting for you there. Now get ready to rock.
When you say no is if you don't think that people are going to be good people to you and respect you, or that you can't find one thing. Like maybe you don't like the genre of music. Maybe it just leaves you a little bit cold in general. But if you can identify one thing in that artist or that project that you can pour yourself into genuinely, then it's worth it because you will grow from the experience.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Atom Audio's S-Series, crafted in Berlin, is a flagship line of reference monitors featuring 5 models. From the compact S2V all the way up to the powerful S5H, the range builds on Atom Audio's iconic heritage with new technology for improved acoustic performance. With new woofers, redesigned waveguides, and a DSP engine, the S-Series ensures accurate frequency response, consistent dispersion, enhanced detail, and a forward-looking digital connectivity. Backed by a 5-year guarantee, Atom Audio monitors embody durability and professional sound for your studio at atomaudio.com. Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound kind of weak or distant or lack punch and clarity? Well, I've got a gift to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding much closer to professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools, and the best part is that these mixing techniques work for you in any DAW, whether you're on Logic, Cubase, Studio One, Reaper, anything you can think of. If you're ready now to make your best record ever, then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. Howdy, Rockstars. It's your host, Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Jacquire King, a Grammy-winning music producer, mixer, and engineer with over 13 billion streams, if I read that correctly, and more than 35 Grammy nominations. His extensive credits include artists like Tom Waits, Kings of Leon, James Bay, Shania Twain, Modest Mouse, Smash Mouth, Norah Jones, Buddy Guy, Zach Bryan, Punch Brothers, Ingrid Michaelson, Cold War Kids, City and Color, and many, many more. And I'm actually going to quote here from his great website bio. Quote, Jacquire has just one gold record hanging in his studio. It's Mule Variations by Tom Waits, a personal favorite in the mile-long list of critically acclaimed albums, multiple Grammy Awards, and national accolades he's earned in more than 30 years as a sought-after recording engineer and producer. Jacquire grew up in Washington, D.C. area, absorbing a rich mix of influences from reggae to punk rock. While his friends were forming hardcore bands, Jacquire was studying the noise, making cassette mixes, and learning to transform raw live music into a complex listening experience. If he maintains one constant aesthetic in his work, it's blending traditional recording artistry with emerging tools and technology. Quote, curiosity moves an art form forward, so I incorporate whatever gives the artist the freedom to create. I always want to be part of that evolution. He is committed to playing an active role in the recording industry's next chapter as well, serving as an ambassador for new technology and acting as a frequent mentor to up-and-coming professionals In Jacquire's own words, I don't have any studio secrets, he says, but if I can help somebody figure out their own combination of talent and technology, I want to do that. If I can give an artist a new tool to make something great, count me in. So that's the end of the quote from the website. I think that's super relevant, particularly based on the variety of sonic palettes that show up in Jacquire's discography, which you will find in the show notes, Rockstars. Just scroll down and we've got a link to that, and you can go listen to many of the favorite records that Jacquire sent over. He also works out of his own studio, the LBT, just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And I want to give a big shout out and a thank you to Matt Boudreau from Working Class Audio and Mark Rubel from Blackbird for connecting us, and also for our buddy Dave Hinsey over at API for putting us on the same golf team for the annual Audio Masters Benefit Golf Tournament for the Engineers Relief Fund, which is a really cool experience. And I would say if deals really do get made on the golf course sometimes, then perhaps this interview might be one of them, because here we are today after having done that. So please welcome Jacquire King to Recording Studio Rockstars. Jacquire, welcome, man. Are you ready to rock, my friend?
Thank you, Liz. I'm happy to be here. It's an honor. And yeah, I'm ready to rock. I'm always ready to rock, buddy.
I figured it's great to have you here, and we really appreciate it. I know you and I have been talking about doing this for quite some time, so thank you for making time for us.
Absolutely. And thank you for being patient with my life and schedule.
You're welcome, dude. I know that you're busy, but after playing golf with you for a day, I realized just how busy you are too. You've got a lot of things going on in your world. And you even seem to have a lot of incoming messages and outgoing messages in between golf balls. So tell us what's new with you, man. I'd love to get a little bit of a brief arc of your own journey too. Also about getting into music and making records and being where you're at now. But I know that's a long story. So if you want to give a very short one, you're welcome to.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, well, first I'd say that I think the activity of my life is, in a very busy place, like personally and professionally. I've been sort of transitioning, not away from, the roles that I played over the last several decades, but, in terms of mixing and producing, but I'm sort of semi-retired from it too, because I don't have the same appetite, which is kind of natural after the period of time that I've been doing it. And I have curiosity and interest in other things that are related. And I've had so many tremendous opportunities. So I've sort of been branching off into these other areas that are still very attached to where I started, but they're a progression. And then, I have grandchildren now, and
Wow.
family, and I love to play golf. So, and I've met a ton of people through that in pursuit, and I'm actually going to be part of a small team that's going to oversee a new golf course being built here in the state of Tennessee. So,
Oh, wow, that's cool.
But like a couple years ago, now it's almost 3 years. I started an artist management company, and so that has been. It's a side hustle still, just because we've been growing. My partner, Rich Naumoff, and I have been growing our company and sort of pouring a lot of sweat equity into it. But it's really starting to pay off, and really enjoy it. So that's pretty time consuming. I mean, I knew that that role and that space was pretty demanding, but I didn't. You don't really realize the full scope of it until till you're there. So we're building a company, and, fortunately, while we're building our company, we've had a lot of success with our artists. We've signed we currently have 4 on the roster. All of them have been signed to record deals, publishing. So that's been a lot of fun, but, especially when you assign. We have an artist, Rouet. It's a duo band. We've signed them to Sony Music, and we released a single earlier this year called Karma, and we did that with a strategic partnership with Volcom, the lifestyle sort of surf skate apparel brand, and they, because Volcom used to have a label, and they used to have a label, and they are interested to kind of get back into the music space and partnering with artists. So they identified Rue, and we partnered with them as the first artist to reignite this rollout and initiative. So we released Karma in early this year. I think it was February, and yesterday we just that song just achieved 1 million streams.
Wow.
Yeah. And, sort of part of the strategy with them was also leveraging social media. And, so we've now signed to Sony Music. And, when you sign to a major label, there's a massive amount of teams and support that you have to, you kind of get acquainted with, and the infrastructure that's, created. There's a lot of phone calls and a lot of legal work and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
And we have a really fantastic agent that's come on to represent them. So it's a very busy season, but, we're learning and growing, and it's super exciting. It's super exciting. And Oliver Hazard, we've signed them to Network Music. So a little bit of the genesis of the management company is, and I tried this, probably more than a decade ago. It's probably been 15 years ago. A friend of mine, John Stinson, and I started a management company. Unfortunately, we didn't really have that much money, and we didn't really choose a great artist. So that didn't, that kind of fell apart after about a year. But, so I've had an interest for a long time in these things, but it's really the appropriate time in life. And so I made a record. I met Oliver Hazard in Ohio at a charity golf tournament at Jason Day's charity event, and they had been hired to sort of be the house band and play some music for one of the social events in it. And immediately, I heard them singing and playing for like 30 seconds, and I was like, wow, these guys are really good. And we had a casual conversation afterwards, and I just I extended an invitation if they're in Nashville to sort of come and visit me. Well, that conversation grew into us planning to make a record in the spring of 2020. Well, then COVID came along, and we delayed for a while, but then we just sort of decided, like, look, everybody's been in isolation, everybody's healthy. Let's get together and make this record. Around making the record, the plan to make the record, I was like, you guys need a manager. I want to make a record with you. So this is what we'll do. We'll partner, we'll make the record, and then I'll shop you to my manager friends. And, because I want to be certain at this point that if I'm going to do something, that it has a good opportunity,
Yeah.
And so the pandemic hit, we made the record anyways. And then, the realization was like, I'm not going to be able to place you with a manager, because nobody's going to take on an emerging baby band, artist, with all that they're dealing with, they're
Right.
because, management companies, you have your breadwinners, your high profile artists that make money for the company and allow you to engage with developing artists. It's a very common sort of business practice. So we made the record, and it's like, okay, we have to think of plan B, guys. And I said, let me do some legwork. And I got them a publishing administration deal with Cobalt. And so got that to happen. And I've been kind of, helping them, sort of somewhat managing them a little bit. And I said, look, I got you this publishing deal. If I were to hire a day-to-day manager, or partner with a day-to-day manager, well, at the time it was like hire a day-to-day manager, would you guys be interested in trying me out as a manager? And we came to an agreement. And, I found Rich through a friend of a friend. Rich, he was hired at first, but now he and I are full partners. And, we've gone on to grow the company. So, the record that I made with Oliver Hazard is what's been signed to Network Music. And we're gonna start making the next record in about 3 weeks.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So first of all, yeah, Oliver has a beautiful voice. So I can see how that would catch your attention when you first heard it too. But when you talk about getting the publishing deal, how many deals does an artist need to make these days? Like for somebody who doesn't know much about this, What's sort of a broad perspective on you need to be prepared to succeed as an artist? You need to be prepared to, broker deals with these different parts of the
Yeah, that's a
industry.
very good question. Well, you listen, at this point, you can be, self-published, and you can use things like Song Trust, or there's a bunch of options out there where you can sort of be in a global collection system, but you got to do the legwork yourself. If they're there, but you have to go and you have to register your songs. You have to, you have to do the legwork, but you can you can be self-published. You can be, you can get a DistroKid account. You can be your own record label. You can build all these things. And hopefully, hopefully you can build off that and get a publishing deal. But I'm trying to think how to. I want to sort of address how you can do this DIY, but that so because these days nobody in the music business like this, like a publishing company, a record label, a booking agent, a business manager, a manager. So those are five partnerships you have to have. Almost, almost none of them will take on an artist that has not built a following, or does not have released music, or that has not shown some uh have done some work to build a fan base and kind of put themselves out there. It's not a dreamer's. It's not. I mean, we're all dreamers, but we also have to be doers. It's not a dreamer's world anymore.
Yeah.
Now, like the first partnership you can probably arrive at is a management relationship, because then you're finding somebody that wants to just sort of dig in and do the hard work with you. But you can self-release music, you can self-publish music, you can book your own shows, and then you should also, there's lots of really great tools for you to be able to manage your money. Have a website with online merchandise. The most critical part of, and then there's social media. I mean, that's a big aspect of it. Social media managers. I mean, then you're putting the hands of your brand into someone else that is kind of doing an interpretation. And we're still, even with the success that we've found with our artists, we still haven't handed anything off to anybody. We've come up with systems of support and scheduling. There's a lot of different software out there, which I'm not the person to tell you exactly what those pieces are, because that's not really my day to day. But I can tell you that things like TikTok and Instagram are hugely important.
Yeah.
Instagram is more of the curated, mindful sort of space where you can really present things that seem a little bit more careful and curated towards supporting your brand and creating awareness. TikTok is kind of like the Wild West, but it also has the most eyes on it. And the kind of the cool thing about TikTok is you can post the same thing over and over and over again. You can post the same post 8 times and just keep wearing it out, because eventually, if a few people start to see it and recognize it, the algorithm will kind of take hold of it, and it'll start putting it in front of a lot more eyes.
That's fascinating. I have a couple of questions for you about that.
Sure.
One is, do you find that as we think about things like social media, that there are different sort of age brackets that we should think of for different parts of social media? And two is, I know you spent a lot of time out in, pretty close to Silicon Valley, if not right in it. And do you feel like that stuff really informed your understanding of all these kind of digital tools?
Not so much not sort of my activities out there with Meta or Universal Audio. But I mean, I think it probably deepened my awareness, but not necessarily put the thoughts. It didn't expose me to it. It kind of deepened my connection and awareness of it, but not.
Yeah.
I think, for whatever reason, I have always been able to sort of pay attention to what's next. Because I'm a, it's like I have an unending curiosity, and and I'm really motivated, and I love new stuff. I'm kind of an old soul. I am an old soul, but I live in a modern space.
Yeah.
It's like I've been thinking. I have a studio with a lot of beautiful equipment that just doesn't get used as much anymore because
Yeah.
it's not practical or efficient. Um, uh, and not just that, it's just like there's a lot of really good alternatives that exist in the computers and emulations and all these things. And I'm dealing with young engineers they want to know how to use this stuff. And they do learn to use it, but they still kind of gravitate back towards the tools that they grew up on and came up into the space. I'm kind of getting a little tangential, but
No, that's all right, because I know you started out with a real technical fascination too. Weren't you one of the first early people with Pro Tools in the studio and that
absolutely.
sort of thing?
Yeah, I started using the DigiDesign Sound Designer 2 card with a program by Mark of the Unicorn called Studio Vision. And so I was working. So yeah, I mean, it's like I loved the Beastie Boys. I loved hip hop. I love the art of capturing samples and pieces of music and creating and the collage of it. And Public Enemy, Takes a Nation of Millions. That album kind of, I think I got that when I was 18 or 19 years old. I think it was 19. It like tore the top of my head off.
Yeah.
It was just, what is going on? Because I recognized some of the music in it. I recognized some of the needle drop stuff, and just got me, just kind of got me that headed in that direction. So I discovered, this is probably around 1989 or 90, 91. It's a little fuzzy now, but at that time, very early 90s, you could use a Studio Design, Sound Designer 2 card, DigiDesign Sound Designer 2 card. And with this Mark of the Unicorn Studio Vision, you could have 4 tracks of digital audio. So we were already syncing the computer to the tape machine to run MIDI, to run the samplers at the studio. I worked at a hip hop studio. One of the studios I worked at was a hip hop studio. So we did that. That was like every day, and so it's like, oh wow, I can have 4 tracks of digital audio, and instead of like grabbing something off the tape in a sampler and then flying it back, I could have a much slicker way to capture audio and edit.
Do you remember the transition from thinking of that, that the computer as an external thing that you go to and bring back to the master tapes, to the point at which you were like, why are we going back to the tape? Why don't we just keep this in the computer? And that's sort of similar to what you're saying now. It's like you've got all the old tools, but at a certain point you start thinking, you know what, why don't we I can also do this in the computer.
Well, it's really only been in the last decade. It's only really been in the last decade where I thought where the technology of the computer and the emulations and the infrastructure, the way all that can be, like computer power and everything else, can kind of be handled. I mean, gosh, it's like early Pro Tools, and when we only had 16 tracks and no playlists. I mean, you had to be merciless, and we had like some really crazy kind of workarounds to be able to capture audio in playlist type of ways, and you just didn't have the real estate in the DAW to be able to have even 24 tracks, so you had to be, it'd be really, really creative. And, so it's just like, it's always been kind of this limitation and kind of like arriving now in the last 5 years. I'm almost, I don't have any tape machines anymore. I think I sold my last tape machine 2 years ago. But I've had, I don't know, maybe I don't know, 8 or more, probably around 8 tape machines in my life, or maybe more. I don't know. But, it's like I got away from that. It's control. I mean, I am a huge fan, and this is not because because I'm like a universal audio guy. I'm a huge fan of Luna and the way that it sounds and the way that it works. I don't need tape anymore. I honestly do not need it. Now, can we sit here and argue about, can you tell the difference between, an all analog record and maybe what is being done, digitally in Luna? Well, sure. Maybe there's some small qualities, and maybe someone's really attached to those very slight differences. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to tell the truth of art.
Right.
And, so it's just like those things. It's like, I mean, it's fine if people want to argue about it. I don't care. I feel like, with over the last few years, especially, I know I've been involved with Universal Audio for, I don't know, it's probably going on it's at least a decade and a half.
Yeah.
I've been very instrumental and participated in the development of these things. I've had a voice in it, along with a lot of other people, like my very good friends, Vance Powell and Fab DuPont. They also have had an impact in all of this. And then there's a whole legion of others, and, don't want to leave anybody out, but, I'm all in on it, and it's, like I have a pair of 1081 sitting right here. I don't know how much they're worth. They're probably worth 15 grand or more. It's like, I have an original Blue Stripe back there. They're beautiful, and I use them for years extensively, but, they don't sound they're not as reliable, and easy to use as the in the box equivalents. And, so,
Hey, Rockstar, come on over here. I've got a secret to tell you. Want to know how I get a consistent sound mixing over 1,000 hours of recording studio rock stars? Well, my secret is using Isotope RX, Ozone, Neutron, and Nectar to make this podcast sound great. Right now, you are hearing RX Breath Control, Declick, Declip, DS, Deplosive, Voice Denoise, Ozone Multiband Compression, Neutron EQ, and Limiting, all from Isotope. Use the secret code ROCK10 to get 10% off over at isotope.com. I find there are places where I still feel like, despite having the tool in the computer, I love the process that I used to do outside of the computer. And I forgot which record it was of yours that I was listening to. Sorry, I try to be able to pivot that fast, but it was one of your mixes, I think, where I noticed that like just the delay throws would happen on certain words and stuff like that. And I think of that as an example. There are what to you are ways that you use this digital stuff, but you also let yourself be expressive in the moment, where it happened once and that was the great take. Sure. And you don't have to repeat it or reinvent it somehow with automation and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would say still though, I mean, I got this great little recording console here. I would say it's still about 50% of the time that we're in a tracking environment, that we'll use the analog paths. It's like I'm not 100. I'm 100% in Luna when it comes to mixing, but recording it's probably only about 50%. It depends on the type of session, where it depends on the type of session, who's involved, where where we're going, and just what the vibe is. Yeah. I think when I have to be, so if it's something where the guys, that work with me, the younger guys that work with me in the studio, if it's the kind of thing where they're really going to be at the controls more, we probably end up doing the in the computer a bit, it's a bit more. It's not exclusive because they also do the analog thing. But with me, it's more if I'm the one that's got my hands all over everything and moving fast, it's more the analog gear.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to have somebody move out of the chair. It doesn't not necessarily because of the sonic result, but it's like what you're talking about. It's it's sort of like an engagement in a process.
Yeah.
But either way, it's like I have the ability to hook up a bunch of pedals and tape delay and stuff. it's pretty frequent then when I'm recording certain things, that I'm creating effects in the moment, you know,
Yeah.
and keeping those things and using some analog processes that I have developed over the years that are unique to me, or they're like, it's like a special little piece that not a lot of other people have. I still think it's very important for me to put a little bit of extra sauce that I have in it so that it stands apart. Because the other thing is if everybody's in the computer, we're all using the same plugins. It's like we're all on the same desk, so it does kind of like take away a little bit of the sonic variety. So I try to mix it up.
Well, that's
but even
one of the
if
nice things.
Primarily in the box, I still, we still loop things out to analog.
Yeah, that's one of the nice things. The reminder, you hear this message too, when everybody has the same tools and opportunities, we want to remember that the one thing that makes us stand out from everybody else is ourself, and you're talking about that, putting yourself into what you're recording through your expression, and in fact, one of the questions I even wrote down, I think it was, if I pronounce it right, Niall Horan, Flicker, you got a conductor credit on there. And I think about what we think of conductor as, in front of the orchestra, which that may have been, but also what you're describing in the studio. These are all our conductor moments as producers and engineers and mixers.
Yeah. And that's more, I didn't stand in front of the string section and conduct them. I mean, I was definitely, it's like, as a producer, you're obviously part of the decision making and the execution of that, but I wasn't like a conductor in the traditional sense, as you pointed out. It is sort of, yeah, you're conducting people, which, in a way you do that in the studio anyway as a producer, but like Flicker was kind of recorded live off the floor primarily, right? Like the main instrumentation throughout the song is part of a performance. It was very in the moment, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And I remember Jacquire, who played the piano and keyboards on it. Zach is Zach is in the band Death Cab for Cutie now. Zach is an incredibly creative musician. He's a world-class musician. He's one of the best. But he likes to tinker, and he always has a big old pedal board, and it's just, that's fun. That's exciting. We can record in the box, but I think what younger people sort of miss is that, the sound doesn't all have to be created there. You can kind of create things with amps and pedals and, unique recording in unique spaces or interesting mic selections. There's all kinds of creativity, and that's the stuff that separates us. Like, your room sounds different than mine. So utilize the space, utilize your imagination.
How often have you been doing a guitar overdub or any kind of an overdub with the artist, and they're playing the instrument, but your hands are on the knobs and the effects, helping them create that sound in that moment?
Tons. It's exciting. I mean, it gets everybody engaged and connected in a different way. And yeah, I absolutely love that. It's like, pretty often, as often as possible. And, and that's often how I end up with like a keyboard credit or something, because, it's not like I'm, like Schroeder and I can shred on the, I can shred on a keyboard, but it's just like, I know my way around it, and I hear the notes and I can kind of, not always on pitch, but I can kind of, verbalize the melodies and stuff. I can figure it out, so it's just like, and sometimes when you just have a sound in your head or a texture, you just kind of find it and put it together, and you can execute it, and then technology can help you make it better.
Can you shred on a Memory Man?
Yes. Yeah, I can on delays and that kind of stuff. I absolutely can. Yeah.
So I know that 1+1 management is a really important part of your focus right now. So I want to make sure we pivot back to that some. Sure. If I pronounce it right, Rau, is that the artist?
Rouet.
Excuse me.
Rouet. Yeah, it doesn't look how it sounds, but yes, it's Rouet. Yeah.
How do we spell that again?
Raue.
Okay. All right. That's why. So cool. Awesome. So Roué, what an amazing album cover shot for that artist. So this is two women playing guitar and drums. Is that correct? Or is it's a duo?
Paige Kalenian is the guitar player, singer, basically composes most of the music and fronts the band. Jax Huckle, is a guy.
Okay.
I mean, I think in that photo, Jax had long hair, so it's a little bit.
I couldn't.
It'd be easy to make that mistake, but now Jax has since shaved his head. And no, he's no. So it's a female male duo.
Just awesome, and like this shot of the two of them. The guitarist is just leaping in the air, and this is like it's like the ultimate photograph from the edge of the stage, and you see the drummer in the background. I was just like,
they do that every night.
That's Paige, so awesome.
I mean, they're both incredible, but Paige in particular is a force of nature. She's an incredible person and so talented. And I mean, there's a video that's coming out in the beginning of July for the B-side of the Karma single. It's called Ruby Glow. And so in our partnership with Volcom, we got a bunch of UGC, user-generated content that Paige. So the video that will come out is all Paige basically taught herself Premiere to make this video. Now it took her a few months, and she, but I mean, it's so impressive. It's world class. She did like animation and all kinds of stuff. It's I guess by the time this podcast comes out, that video will be easily viewed. But she's just incredible, and she's the lead producer on the record. So I function as now that I've come into this, I function as kind of the executive producer. So I haven't gone to the studio yet. I will the next sessions we have scheduled. But Paige has been doing this as the lead producer. Jack Shirley is the engineer and mixer. Jack is out in Oakland, California. Paige and Jax are from Santa Cruz, California. The band has relocated to San Diego, so we're still a California band act. So Jack Shirley is the co-producer. Paige leads, and I have been, I've been helping Paige, music selection and the sort of the writing process, and I'm kind of a voice of, just a voice in it, and kind of mentoring her, because she's so capable, and I, don't fix what isn't broken. I just want to help expand. I've enabled her and pushed her, and been a sounding board for her, but I'm letting Paige be Paige, and Jackson Paige be Roué, and it's been a lot of fun. So, and I think that photo you're referring to is captured by a very, very wonderful photographer, Gary Copeland. And it's an iconic photo.
Yeah. It's the kind of, I mean, it's funny because I've been on stage with a guitar, and I've tried to do the leaping guitar, chord windmill thing. And it's hard to do. It's really hard to leap around and play guitar at the same time. It's amazing.
She's not a big person at all, and that guitar is heavy, so it's just like, and they, the thing is like they are a duo, but there's more to the sound on the record. And when they like Paige will play bass, and keyboards and do vocal layers
for the record itself. On the record. In the studio.
On the record. But then they have, Paige has a massive pedal board, and then Jax has triggers that he attaches to his drum kit, and they play the samples. They're not playing to a track, but you hear the keyboards and the other stuff happens.
Oh, cool.
While they're playing, because they're also triggering that stuff too. So, I mean, they're incredible that they can play that at a high energy, jumping around, just really, really, truly rocking. But you get this very full sound out of it. And they figured that out. So
that's an important question. And I'm sure it's one that a bridge that you've crossed before. I know you've seen live performances go from instruments on stage to people trying to figure out how do we play with these tracks from the studio, to people saying, okay, we're going to have a click in our ear, to artists saying we're just going to trigger the things. What have you noticed about that? And do you have any takeaways on how to take the studio sound to the stage like that?
Well, I think I also for many years I was a live sound engineer as well. And one of the first acts that I traveled extensively with was like an industrial hip hop band. And so we did sometimes play to tracks, but they also, not only did they play to tracks, and so it was like drums, guitar, and keyboard were what the guys played on stage, oftentimes to a recorded bed track that was a stereo mix that I would run from the front of house, and then I forget how we generated a click to run some other things, but they would play samples too on top of everything. So like how that has developed, I mean, I like the way Rouet does it because it still is very much performance. I'm not a big fan of where you have to have a Pro Tools rig on stage to play all of it, because it's basically just like big fancy karaoke.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen bands work really hard to do that. And then as a a studio guy, I feel like I'm hearing it constrict their ability to perform on stage.
Absolutely.
So it's always cool to hear of bands that find ways to just let it be part of the instrument, because a live performance is like, there's like the band could do anything in any moment. And that's what makes it so exciting.
Absolutely. It's unique, and not being tied to a click. I mean, I have gone through seasons where, I mean, I would say the majority of my discography is not to click. But certainly, there have been seasons and times where it's really appropriate. And I do make that kind of music. It's like, it's more like genre. I'm not, it's more about genre, but like, this is a very key thing that I think is lost. Performance is being lost in record making and in the live setting. It does constrict them. I totally agree. And in the same way that I believe, sometimes the click can enable you in the studio to kind of be a guiding light, but at the same time, it's not a conversation. Like if you have four musicians, they're having a conversation. They're responding and pulling and moving with each other. The click is it's just talking to the group. It's not listening.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a tricky thing. Now, so also when I got into, there was, when I made like Kaleo and James Bay, and I got into this season where I did a lot of Moon Taxi. I mean, there's a bunch of records. I could just keep going, but where
you've done a lot of good records, dude.
Oh, thanks. Where we would, I'd take the demos, and I would, with the help of others, Spencer Thompson of Moon Taxi has been a big collaborator with me in this, and Eric Darkin is a fabulous percussionist that been in Jimmy Buffett's band for a long time. Eric's percussion playing and his taste and the instruments he has is like unbelievable. But I have those guys. Those guys are the two main people, but I've partnered with several others as well, where we would take the demo and we would create bed tracks. Now we wouldn't replace the main instruments, but we would support it. And like, if you wanted a shaker in the verse, it's like the shaker would appear in the verse. And so when the band would perform to it, it's just like, these things are coming in. It serves a few purposes. It's like, it allows me to kind of create some vision, right, for the sessions. It also allows like to sort of manage the energy. So instead of like, so when that tambourine or those hand claps or whatever kind of comes in those sections, the drummer is then not inclined to try and fill that space, and leave the space. So it kind of informs the performance. And then when they come in off the floor and we want to listen back to something, it sounds more finished. It sounds more like a record. That maybe there's some leading guitar part, it's like, underpin it with some keys, like some cool synthy stuff. So it's almost like doing the overdubs before you do the recording.
Oh, fascinating. So this is sort of like a little bit of a pre-production decision before tracking to let people relax into it. Yeah, because it's amazing how important, like how much you learn that the importance of the space, whether it's there or not there, in what you hear. And I find it's way more forgiving when you're listening on the speakers, but when you put headphones on and you go out there and play, boy, does it affect what you do. Just the teeniest little thing in there can really mess with you or make it work.
Make or break it. You're absolutely right. And then I think that you're absolutely right. I think the final thing I would say is, in doing that, I also almost never, or almost always, I guess I would say, almost always I had tempo changes. It was very uncommon to have one tempo that just played through the whole song. It's like, and sometimes like we'd listen to the pre-production, we'd try to we'd play to it a little bit, and then just to try to get an understanding of what's comfortable, what do we need to turn off for right now, what's too much, like what's getting in the way, what intonation wise is a little bit funny and kind of got to throw people off or whatever, so kind of get our feet wet in that, and then maybe just turn that off and say, okay, just play the song. And then I kind of like monitor the tempo. It's like, some choruses slow down, it's not, they don't, it's like, so then like, okay, so let's make a tempo map, and because, like with the computer, you can have everything kind of like an elastic audio. It'll just conform to the tempo changes. Now, sometimes you have to reprint or redo some of that pre-production work because the sound quality is changed, but then exactly what you're going to use. And it's just kind of easy to reprint it or remake it. And just kind of move through stuff, There was one song that we did with Kaleo that had it's like 4 or 5 breaks in it, like where the music would stop and the tempo, it would get away from whatever tempo you had, and it would kind of just come in where the singer just sort of felt like it was a natural entrance. So we worked all day to figure out what all these, I think it was like 5 different sections, what these different sections felt like tempo wise. And then we had to lay it out. Then we laid it out to where we created a really generous amount of space, but not too much so that they didn't lose the vibe, but to create a generous amount of space to where they'd play the first section and then everything would stop, and then they could just let it rest. And then the next tempo would come in for the next section. And then they'd start again and play that section. And we'd repeat this process. And this was, it literally took all day to kind of get all this to get the sounds, to get the performances, to get this tempo map, to figure out how to execute this. But then, at the end of the day, then what we did is we then just took those sections and moved them closer together to where it felt natural.
Yeah.
And then we, sometimes we'd have to cut off a little bit of the count in that we had, because I think we were using 2-bar count ins just to or 4-bar counters just to kind of erase in the body what had just happened and get ready for the next thing. And then we just kind of like shuffled it all together, and then that became the finished product.
Look, if you're like me, then you love having cool instruments in your studio, right? No matter what style of music you make, Native Instruments gives your studio all the instruments and sounds you need. From drums, loops, and beats to the coolest synthesizers, realistic strings, guitar amps, and futuristic synth pads. I love recording and tracking real bands in my studio, but then adding awesome overdubs from Contact, Massive X, Super 8, Battery, Guitar Rig, and Hybrid Keys, for example. Use the code ROCK10 now to get 10% off, or get Complete Start for free today with a bundle of 2,000 sounds and 6 gigs of samples, all over at nativeinstruments.com. It's really fun to understand when you're in the studio, in the control room, to understand Pro Tools and understand how to arrange tempos and clicks so that you can help a band achieve what they're trying to do out there like that. When you suggest to a band that the tempos are changing slightly, do you ever find it's hard to get them on board with that idea? And do you have some ways to arrive at a consensus between you and the artist that, yeah, let's let the tempo change slightly in the chorus or in this fill, as opposed to an art? Sometimes bands, they go like, oh, and maybe it's just amateur bands versus more experienced ones, but they might say, oh, no. We don't want any tempo changes. We want it to be steady all the way through.
I mean, yeah, so I have come across a little bit of that, but but no, I haven't not met with much. I have not met with much resistance over the whole thought process or thinking back on it. No, I mean, yeah, sometimes, and then finding that sweet spot. Sometimes it just takes a lot of push and pull, a lot of experimentation. Like you got to go too fast or too slow, and then got to invite people into the control room and listen and just kind of. And just have honest conversations. I mean, recording is hard, as you know, man. And it's an emotional roller coaster. Sometimes feelings and things kind of get a little inflamed and a little it's because it's an emotional thing. We're creative. Yeah. So it's also, I mean, it's high stakes. It's like you're working on people's hopes and dreams, their life's ambitions. So you also have to understand who you're dealing with. And that, as record makers, we do this routinely, but we have, and so, I mean, there's many times where I'm a good communicator, but I haven't communicated enough because the people that I'm helping don't understand it the way I do, and they have not experienced it, so you kind of need to just kind of step back and kind of, it's not hand holding, but you really need to consider their experience. But no, I haven't really met with too much resistance. Usually you can make the point of like, and I've had to do this a couple times where it's like, look, just play the song without a click and let's just see what you guys do naturally. And we'll tempo map it out. And it's like, look, it's like, as much as you want to stay at the same tempo, you never do in this section. So And if we weren't talking about tempo, it feels right and good. Yeah. So let's figure out how to make it predictable, but we're going to have to change the tempo. You can usually get there. The thing is, as a producer, you need to work with all the ideas and the artist and be patient and explore, because you don't know everything.
Yeah.
It does come down to you having to make some hard and final decisions, because that's the job. But you have to work to gain trust and to demonstrate that you're there to support them, and because then when it comes to the things where you say, no, we have to go in this direction, or no, I don't like that. Or it's like, when you have to draw a line in the sand, it's like, it will be respected, because you've put in the work to gain the trust and to work on their behalf. And you also know this, it's like, every idea is not a good idea, but every idea can lead to a good idea, or the clarity that, no, we're not changing this. But you have to be willing to take that journey. So, yeah, long answer.
Well,
but yeah.
No, it's great, because you talk about this idea of earning the trust with the band. But what it sparks in my mind is a realization that us in the control room, producing, engineering, mixing, whatever we're doing, working with the band, we're also, as a group, trying to learn and earn the trust with the project and the record itself. Like, each record has its own language for what's correct, and we all have to learn it.
You're absolutely right. Each record is a new opportunity, and each record should stand on its own as its own opportunity and uniquely identify the artist as the artist. It shouldn't sound like the producer. That's always been my attitude, and I've always believed that I could make anybody's record if, like, it, because it's not it's like, I don't have to be the master of a genre or an instrument. It's I'm a co-creator. I'm there to be the lead. I'm there to be the leader in the record making process, you know? So
Does it even need to sound like the same artist's other records?
no, no, that's also a mistake, especially if you haven't made the other ones. Like, you know, if I thought about Mutt Lange while I was making Shania Twain's album, it's like, I mean, might as well just shoot my head off. I mean, I might as well just hang myself. It's just like, you're not going to do that. Not only is that a different talent, it's a different time, it's different technology. You know what the world wants to hear, and what is the feeling of. It's just like, that's to be the dumbest thing to do, to try to be someone other than myself, right? It's like, you know, people call me for me. Now, not always with the right motivation, because it's like, you might make a successful record for this one artist, and then because it's successful, another artist that's completely different and doesn't honestly get the art of what this other record is, but they like the success. It speaks to them in some way, and they like the success of it. They think that you can make them equivalent to that. And
Right.
that's also not true. That's also a mistake. And we learn from our mistakes. I've learned all these things because of the mistakes or poor judgment or just experiences I've had. You know, I'm very proud of my discography, certainly. But none of my records sound. I mean, I think you can if you examine them and you kind of like, if you were to examine them and kind of like step back, I think you could identify who Jacquire King is in them. But it's only after my hope is it's only after thoughtful examination. It's like, it doesn't hit you in the face. The artist sounds like the artist. It's their truth that I'm supporting. So
yeah.
You know,
well, that sort of reminds me, one of the questions I wrote down, which I feel like is related to that, and it's this topic of learning from mistakes, was just a simple question. I mean, looking at your discography and your career, it sort of looks to us like everything you record is a success. But have you also made a lot of records that we've never heard of? And for all of us, what's you know, how do we say, oh, I've got a good balance of that?
Yeah,
like,
well,
everything's okay.
Listen, I think the playlist that we created together is 33 songs. I have made probably, you know, well over 200 albums. So that, you know, so they're, you know, and then a lot of them don't make it into the analytics, you know, like they're not on the DSPs, you know, a lot of them weren't successful. Were they a great experience? And, you know, am I proud of them? And if we put them on and listen to them, would they be enjoyable? Would I think they still sound pretty good? Yep. Probably some of it, not, you know, it's like maybe not all of it, but I'm not, you know, because I'm not infallible. I didn't, you know, it's just like I mean, that's also the secret. It's just like, I'm not trying to do this all on my terms. If I think I was trying to do this all on my terms, I don't think we'd be sitting here having this conversation. I'm making the artist record. You know, I have a profound impact on it. And I feel like in some cases, and I don't mean this to sound egotistical, but I feel like in several cases, I've made some artist's best record, you know? And that's not, you know, that's not really to pat myself on the back. It's just, I think I've approached it the right way. I've been part of creating the right opportunity for all of us, you know, but I've been a part of it. So, but you know, further to your question, it's like, most people know me for a handful of things, you know, and I think this is true of all of our heroes. We know them from a handful of their work that really stands out. Doesn't mean that the quality of their work wasn't, you know, there on all the rest, and that the experience wasn't great and the art wasn't great. It's just sort of the law of averages and the way the world works. You know, so so we just have to sort of like think about that. If we were to think about all of our heroes, and then, you know, without researching it on Google, like from your mind, if you could like jot down some of the things that you acknowledge their heroes for, it's just a handful of things, you know, and I fit right in there. And so, So this is another thing. I speak to Mark Rubel has me come and talk to all the graduating classes. I'm the last person to speak to all the classes at Blackbird Academy. Um, uh, and it's an honor to have this sort of role. But, what I talk about is like, I try to inspire people, and give them a broad perspective. It's like, if you want to talk about, EQ curves and tape and polarity and all those things, I will wear it out with you. But, that's all sort of beside the point, because we all have to learn, the technology, but we have to harness it in the right way that's uniquely powerful for ourselves. And, so I really just try to inspire people to take this journey. What I tell the students and I try to tell everybody is like, take this journey because it really is going to be meaningful to you. That like, if you don't, I'm really fortunate that I've had the success I've had, but, if I'd been able to survive it monetarily without all this success, I don't think I would have gone into a different line of work. I would have stayed the course. So, because if I can do good work and I can make enough money to have the type of facility that I need to continue to do my craft, and I can pay my bills, that's really what it should be about, And I know, and that may sound like, oh, well, yeah, it's easy for you to say because you are where you've arrived, but no, I really truly believe that, and it's like it's what keeps me in it today because I don't have to do any of this stuff anymore. It's because I want to, and so I want to stay on the journey, and that's what I really want people to really have an honest conversation with themselves about. It's like, you're not going to go to the Blackbird Academy and then 2 years later win a Grammy and have a gold record. Now, I'm not saying it's not possible, because certainly it is possible, but that kind of success is also very hard. Fast success is very hard. Even the kind of slow success that I've had has been challenging, because you kind of wake up and you're like, whoa, I feel like I've lost myself a little bit in this, you kind of get out of touch. People start calling you, it's just like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Maybe I should do that. And it's like, well, I don't know that I love that artistry music as much as I should, in a way that I can really offer myself. And then that makes me think of one more thing, and I'll catch my breath. I now have the opportunity to take the projects that I want to take and say, yes, I have that ability to say yes or no. I'm interested, not interested. I'm not the right person. I feel like I'm the right person. I'd be really excited to do this. But, to get to that place, you have to say yes to a lot of stuff. And, what you need to, when you say no, is if you don't think that people are going to be good people to you and respect you, or that you can't find one thing. Like, maybe you don't like the genre of music, and maybe it's just, maybe it just leaves you a little bit cold in general. But if you can identify one thing in that artist or that project that you can pour yourself into genuinely, then it's worth it, because you will grow from the experience, especially working on something like, if you have to dig deep within yourself to even just find the inspiration to be there and do a good job, like, you'll grow so much. And,
yeah.
That lesson, I think, was the most significant to me within all the live sound that I did, because I lost a studio job and I had a hard time getting another studio job. And I kind of at first was doing live sound just as well, I can figure out how to do this because I know the tools. Didn't really know the job. But I can figure it out, and I did quite well at it, and I enjoyed it. And I had so many amazing memories. I've mixed thousands of shows. I've toured the world. I've had really special nights, introduced to artists I didn't have awareness about, all kinds of things. Really incredible. And in hindsight, it's like, I really value that experience. I found a way to put myself into it, even though it's not what my goal was. That I got so much out of it that I use in my record making now, that if I hadn't taken that journey, I wouldn't be who I am now.
Yeah. That's wise. That's wise. The S Series by Adam Audio, crafted in Berlin, is a flagship line of reference monitors, blending advanced engineering and in-house design. With 5 models in various sizes and configurations, these monitors build on Adam Audio's iconic heritage while incorporating new technology for improved acoustic performance. The range includes the compact S2V with the 7-inch woofer, the 3-way S3H with twin 7-inch woofers, the vertical S3V with a single 9-inch woofer, and the powerful S5H and S5V main monitors featuring a 12-inch woofer and exceeding 131 dBSPL per pair. Despite differences in size and power, all these models provide highly analytical sound for professional audio applications. The S Series includes new woofers, mid-range drivers, redesigned waveguides, and a DSP engine for crossover optimization. The result is accurate frequency response, consistent dispersion, enhanced detail in bass and mid frequencies with wider frequency ranges, and forward-looking digital connectivity, all in a durable design. The S Series ensures longevity in your studio, backed with a 5-year guarantee at adamaudio.com. I am massively impressed with iZotope Ozone. I've been mastering a lot of my records recently, and Ozone makes it so easy for me to get a fantastic sound. The Mastering Assistant will help you get started by measuring your track and suggesting all the settings you need for a professional result based on the genre and EQ curve of your choice. You can even reference a specific song if you want, using simple yet sophisticated modules like Clarity, Impact, Low-End Focus, Stabilizer, Imager, Exciter, and Spectral Shaping, along with powerful dynamic EQ, compression, and limiting. You simply adjust the settings to your own taste and it sounds incredible. And the magic of master rebalance means you can reach into your mix at the mastering stage and manipulate the vocal, bass, and drums. My bandmates are pretty demanding of my mixes, but now when I send off the masters for approval and get comments back like, "Holy bleep, pristine, damn good mastering, crystal clear, you're a wizard, finally I love my singing, and the drums and bass sound huge," well then I know I'm doing something right. So check out the newest Ozone, RX, and all the other great apps at iZotope.com and use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off. Hey Rockstars, we're back now for the jam session. My guest today is Jacquire King, joining us from his studio, LBT, in Franklin, right? Are you out in Franklin?
Yeah, I'm in Franklin. Yeah, it's Franklin,
All right.
Tennessee. So yeah, 20 minutes south of Nashville.
Sweet. You ready to jam?
Yeah, I'm ready to jam. Let's go, brother.
Right, man. Speaking of which, I don't think we talked about it much, but you know, you've got a beautiful gold top Les Paul behind you on the wall. And I know in your bio, you talked about your friends were starting punk rock bands and you got fascinated by the tech side of things. Did you also play a lot of guitar, or did you have a sort of a musician chapter to your career as well?
Sure. Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. When I was young, I wanted a drum kit. My parents gave me an acoustic guitar, which I didn't really spend much time with, honestly. I spent more time.
It's a little quieter in the house.
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't like the records I was listening to as much. I was more fascinated with the hi-fi and my mom's record collection. But in high school I played bass, and I kind of messed around. I never was in an official band, so I had this cool PV bass, and then I had an SVT. I broke a window in our house with the SVT. It was so loud.
Really?
Yeah. It probably wasn't good for my hearing, but and then probably when I was, I think I was about 19, I got a guitar. I got a Les Paul. I got a guitar. I was 18 or 19, and then so I was playing guitar when I started. I was still playing guitar when I started my first assistant engineer job, and I did play in some bands that had come into the studio and made records with me, back at that time. And so since that time, I've always pretty much always had some guitars and amps around. And like I said, we had a piano at home when I was growing up, and I played a little bit. I think I took piano lessons for like 6 months, but I've never been very disciplined about playing an instrument. I definitely have a very good understanding, and I'll sit around occasionally and kind of play guitar. I have learned to play drums as an adult.
Nice.
Owning drum kits, it's like, well, it's just like, well, I own a drum kit. I might as well do what I wanted to do when I was a kid. So, but I'm not a terribly proficient musician. I can speak the language, and I know how to make choices, and I can hear the instrumentation for making records and all that sort of stuff. So that's sort of my experience with it.
Well, it's one of the things that's fascinating to me about doing this too, is like I'm similar to you. I play. I mean, I love playing, but I didn't pour my time and energy into playing for my career. I poured my time and energy into, turning knobs in front of the speakers. But during that process too, I recognized that our ears become, and our understanding of music becomes advanced, even if we don't know necessarily how to play all the things. We know exactly what it might, it's probably supposed to sound like.
Mm-hmm.
What about the amount that you have played and then playing in the studio? Have you found that having some guitar as a player, that you understand what sort of feels good to you when you play and it comes out of the speakers, or you play and you're in headphones? With your drumming, have you found that playing some drums has helped you understand what it should sound like when you mic up a drum kit? Do you find it can really inform us those ways?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I'm an amazing air drummer too. Yeah, certainly. Like, absolutely. I've found the same growth as you mentioned for yourself there. Just like I have a very advanced understanding, and being able, having spent the time that I did spend on the instruments, has also informed my understanding of performance. I think mixing live sound really did as well. But I think probably at this point in my life, I've spent as much time programming as I have playing instruments.
Yeah.
And so that's also been, and then also being such an early adopter of DAWs, and sort of, and then getting a visual representation of what feel like, okay, this music feels good. Oh, that's what it looks like. It's not all bang on the grid. It's like,
right.
And it's genre, like, where the bass falls on, in relationship to the beat is very different in different genres of music, and just kind of learning those things and understanding those things. It's, it's just kind of like an accumulated experience. I think, if I had the inclination to be disciplined enough to now sit down and really work on being proficient on an instrument, I think I definitely would have a massive head start. So yeah, it's definitely been useful. And it's also, I think also in choosing instruments that I have here at the studio. I mean, somebody could come to my studio, and now I don't have everything in the world, but I have enough of everything, kind of like that. We could make a record. You could just show up here, not bring a thing, and we could make a full-on cool record, because I have pretty much all. I mean, I probably own a dozen guitars, and amps, and I have I have the main, that Les Paul. I got a Telecaster on the other side. I got all kinds of stuff, but in terms of guitar amplifiers, I have like weird boutique-y, small, strange amps,
Did you notice that? Did you notice at some point that all the amps you wanted to acquire were small ones, and then you're like, oh, that's because they record well in the studio. I don't need a big one for the stage.
No, exactly. Yeah, I did. And it's just like a nice character amp to supplement someone's sound. Like, it's like, no, hey, it's like, okay, great. Maybe they play their amp and their guitar for the main part, but it's just like, okay, let's double it. Like, try this guitar. Let's hook up this amp. It's going to sound, it'll sound unique to what you have, and it'll pair really nicely with it, and kind of like create a nice sound palette,
Right.
So,
But then you're also like, but let me dial in the memory man while you're playing that guitar part.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the other artists that was listed as stuff that you're focused on right now, the K Club project. I wanted to know if you wanted to talk a little bit about that. What is it? I think that's a partnership with Stefan Sharp or something like that.
Well, yeah, Steven is one of my partners.
Yeah.
So Steven and Spencer, Steven Sharp and Spencer Thompson are definitely some main collaborators in that. I've expanded it a bit. So what the K Club, so at the time, Meta was still called Facebook. And so Facebook, this is a few years ago, they have what's called the sound collection. So they have their own they have a library of license-free music that they own. You can attach like in Facebook and Instagram, you can call up your favorite song and attach it to a visual. And that's super cool. But that, they also wanted to kind of have their own license-free music, like their own resource of music, not only for those types of things, but other, it's like they're getting into virtual spaces and just games and different things that just like, and then, they can use these pieces of music in the stems too. Like you could use the drums from this song and the keys from this other song, and create a new piece of music. So
nice.
It's not really defined everything they're doing with it, but they've been creating this sound collection. And so they need creators to basically to make the music. So they partner with creators, and I've been fortunate enough to been doing this with them for a handful of years. And it's a work for hire. So, they give, there's a budget, but basically I create music for them that they own, like they own the master and the publishing on, and it goes into the sound collection, but it gets used in social posts on Facebook, for people's visuals. And you get name recognition for it. And so going into it, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this under the K Club because I have a lot of different people that I want to partner with. I want to create like a big opportunity. So, and it's also the K Club is a famous golf course in Ireland. So it's kind of nice. Like, it's a little, kind of a little personal thing.
I don't know if it was a little shout out to your last name there.
It is too. It is that. Right. Yeah, that's the primary. That's the sort of the hopefully the more obvious part of it. But
yeah. So when they, the work for hire thing, when they say, hey, go hit the studio, here's a budget, is there a guidance for, come back with these sort of styles of music, or is it anything goes, or, and also what's super fun about doing stuff like that?
There is an A&R process typically with, I think with a lot of the people. I fortunately have been given carte blanche, and it's worked out well. My assets in the sound collection perform really well. So, I'm in the top 10 or 15% of, the way my assets perform, which is really cool. And so basically I've just kind of had free reign. So what's cool about it is they let the artist put their name on it. So basically they're paying for the artist to create music works. But then now Meta, the Meta Music Initiative, Meta licenses the music. Well, they don't license it to you. They allow you to put it on the DSPs and earn the streaming rights from it. So it's not a ton of money, but so what I realized in all of this is like, okay, cool. I can put this out on my record. I can put this out on K Club Records, and I can create a profile for the K Club. And so, we've been doing this for a few years now. I think we have certainly over 100 works, pieces of music in the sound collection. And, Steven's name is associated with these, so it's like, now we're getting into a thing where, okay, we've created a brand. There's a lot of music out there that you can go and find. And now we're starting to get into where we're creating stuff under the K Club heading, but that we own it. So we've built an opportunity on this platform to then now sort of like have our own masters or our publishing that sit beside the work we've already done. Two of my assistants, they're both named Dawson.
Nice.
I have three guys that work with me: Dawson, and Sam. The Dawson March was with me first. She's been with me a few years. Dawson Geneva Co. has been about a year and a half. We call Dawson 2 DG. Well, DG is a guitar player, and he's kind of he's a hip hop kid, but he plays guitar. And then Dawson March is amazing piano player, and really loves things like Snarky Puppy and hip hop. And so, I had before DG came along, I had started to encourage Dawson, because he would stay after sessions or at the end of the day, and he'd play my piano. And I'm just like, this guy is so good. And I'm like, hey man, why don't, we got this K Club thing. Why don't we? So I kind of nurtured him. So I nurtured him through that process. He completed his first song. Like he had fully written a song, but he hadn't fully written a song and recorded it and made it a record in his life before that time. So we did that. So Dawson March has his own releases under the K Club. Then I got the two Dawsons to start creating music together. So they also do stuff, and I dub them as dose,
Nice.
Yeah. So because it's dose, it's like two, but it's also we spell it like a dose of medicine.
How often are lyrics involved in vocals, or is it all instrumental?
It's almost all instrumental at this point. It's just better for the pairing with the visual, in the sound collection. And honestly, it can be more fun. Like when I get a group of musicians together to play, it's like the freedom, because when we do band sessions for the K Club, we will come up with, I think our most in one day is 5 pieces of music, fully recorded 5 pieces of music. And that's, to do that, you're really moving. We typically do no less than 3 on a session, but we just I get a group of my favorite players to come down. That includes Josh Paul, Eli Beard, Logan Todd, Elliot Blaufus, Drew Smithers. I know I'm leaving people out, but get them to come down, and we just kind of set up, and it's like somebody, it's like I'll have an idea, and then I kind of lead them down a path, or somebody's got a riff, and everybody just kind of falls in, and we just make a jam out of it. And it's just like, okay, that's the A section. That's the B section. We need a C. We need kind of a departure. And it's just like, we make these 2.5, 3.5 minute jams, and it's just fun. There's no agenda. The reason that part of it's easier to make instrumental music, because you don't have a lyric and an artist and a song in front of you. Many of the players tell me it's like their favorite sessions to do, because it's really it's a fun hang. You come in, make music. There's no agenda other than to just have fun. We have to walk away with some music at the end of the day, but that's what we do every day. So it's
that's super fun. Do you, it's in my own experience jamming with people. I'm always struck by how sometimes, depending on where you're at in an idea stage, it can be one experience if it's just you and a drummer. It's another experience if you throw in a third person or a fourth person. Then it becomes, you have to be, I don't know, you sort of have to have somebody leading the chord progression, and everybody else has to just agree that's what it's going to be. It's fascinating, all the layers of that.
Oh, it totally is. David Crutcher is an amazing keyboard player that do you know David? He's like a tech whiz too. But Logan Todd introduced me to David, and I've done a couple sessions with them where it was just drums and keys. And David he's such a beast. He can play a very complicated bass line with his left hand and just rip it like a keyboard part. I don't know how he does it. It's just like,
you gotta have 2 brains for that, I think.
Basically.
But the cool thing about composing like that with just 2 is it's like instant pivot. You can almost instant,
Yeah.
Well, obviously one person is instant. You could just change your mind and do something totally different. But with 2, it's sort of like easier to do that with. As you add more people, it becomes a little bit trickier, but then also you can fall into these instant compositions. That's kind of fascinating. What about the process of doing what you're doing and being able to sort of stem it out later? Do you have to set up things where you're like, okay, all the instruments clearly have to be isolated from each other in this process?
Yeah. So I've been using the Universal Audio aux boxes for a number of years. I don't think I've put more than, in the last 3 years, I probably haven't recorded guitar amps with microphones more than a dozen times. Use the aux boxes a lot. The bass is direct. You got the drums and keyboards are direct. So like in a very that's kind of generally the basic instrumentation for the band sessions, the 4-piece. It's like drums, bass, keys, guitar. The only thing making real sound in the room is the drums. So yeah, because you're right, we do have to be able to stem it out and isolate it to fulfill the delivery requirements. Yeah.
And do you have the drums in their own space, or do you guys like to stand around each other around the drum?
No, they're all in one room.
Okay,
all in one room. Yeah.
So it's sort of like headphones. And do you feel like that's how your studio has evolved? Did you have a studio with a separated control room at a certain point, and now you've found that what we might call here in Nashville is the writer's room?
I still have a separate control room from the recording space, and there's a vocal booth and an ISO booth in there. So, I mean, but it's, I mean, certainly the technology has afforded the opportunity to have larger ensembles playing here in a more modest space than in the past, and have the separation. I mean, totally easy to make, records in small rooms if you know how to record and deal with the leakage and the spill. And honestly, making those kinds of records is some of my favorite, because you get sounds and textures and depth that you can't create any other way. When part of the drum sound is in the piano mics, it just, like a lot of all the Tom Waits stuff is very much like that stuff, and that was an incredible opportunity and proving ground, exposure for me, to like work on those skills. But there again goes back to the live sound thing. I've done like big bands, Brian Setzer orchestra types, that specifically. And then other things where you've got like drums, and you got like a rock band on stage, basically a rock band on stage with a horn section, so it's like, and piano, there's a lot of leakage. It's really tricky live, because to get the separation and clarity and not have all the crazy feedback, and then those skills have translated to the studio too.
Yeah. What do songwriters, music producers, DJs, EDM, TV, and film composers all have in common with you and me? We all need incredibly cool sounds that instantly transport the music we are creating to the style that we want. This is why Native Instruments is your ultimate toolkit with a massive library of sounds for your studio. Whether you want to create hip-hop, indie pop, classic rock, meditation music, pumping dance floor beats, or full orchestral arrangements, Native Instruments' complete bundle offers you everything you need, from drums, loops, and beats to wild synths, ultra-realistic strings, and vintage electric bass, guitars, and keys. The list goes on and on. I personally love recording real bands in my studio and then adding cool drum samples, synths, and futuristic keys from Battery, Contact, Massive X, Guitar Rig, and Hybrid keys, for example. Plus, it's a great way to make your productions sound modern and unique. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off, or get Complete Start for free today with a bundle of 2,000 sounds and 6 gigs of samples over at nativeinstruments.com. Okay, good. Well, we definitely have some Tom Waits questions coming up too, so I'm glad that you brought that up. I know one last comment I wanted to make about that. One of the things that I do love about recording in the studio today, the technology has helped with, is it's so simple to have a control room set up and a computer, but then go out to the live room and participate, because, you can just get like a MacBook Air. You can just get a little light, feather light laptop and now it's screen controlling the studio computer, and you can basically run a Pro Tools session from anywhere in the studio so easily these days. And you probably went through that whole experience previously. Remember, we used to have to use things like Timbuktu and all these crazy apps to try and get computers to do that. Now it's all built in, but it's really cool.
It is really cool. And I have in the past had versions of that, and it's really wonderful. But technology is great if it's utilized in the right way. If you're utilizing it to enable the creative process instead of making it the main avenue, I guess, for the creative process. It's like, it's sort of hard to articulate that because it's a very gray area. But you have to lead with your inspiration and the humanity of all this and the musicianship of all of it, and let the technology enable you as opposed to lead with the technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we're about to be inundated with AI music. Like now more than ever is it important if you want to uniquely identify yourself as an artist and have depth. Because I think on a subconscious level, people are gonna. I think in a way, even though I'm a little bit frightened by the volume of what may come, I think it also does afford. Because that's going to put more pressure on artists, to have opportunity for their music to find a place of exposure, but it also, by the same token, it does provide an opportunity to be uniquely artistic, and find a voice.
Well, in the same way that I'm always, it makes my day when I see somebody young in the studio that's showing me their band and they've recorded something and it sounds like old Rolling Stones. And then I say, oh, are you familiar with such and such a record? And they've never heard of the Rolling Stones or that record. It's going to be fascinating if one day, AI creates music and it actually never heard of the one that it's quoting.
That is a wild thought. That is a wild thought. But it's totally,
go ahead.
I see that as a very real eventuality.
Yeah. Well, I think like everything else, I think the AI stuff is going to be drum machines 2.0. It's going to be another tool, and we're all making music with it one way or another. But it also gets plenty of airtime. So let me go to something that doesn't get a lot of airtime, which is these awesome questions that have come in from the rock stars for you, Jacquire, through our Facebook group. Rock stars, if you would like to participate in the podcast and be able to interact and ask some questions, go to facebook.com/groups and just look for Recording Studio Rockstars there. We'll have a link, I think, in the show notes too, and you can join it. But when you do join the group, make sure you answer the 3 questions or you will get ejected with all the bots that try and join our group too. But this first one comes in from Ash Emil, if I'm pronouncing your name right, Ash. Thanks for sending in your question. Ash says, I am particularly interested in the mixing techniques of The Love Still Held Me Dear, City and Color. Vocal reverb technique, dry drum sound, and nice cohesive warmth. Beautifully balanced guitar sound. Looking forward to this one, Lidge. So it's not exactly phrased as a question, but Jacquire, do you want to comment on the mixing techniques of City and Color and just your experience working with that?
Sure. I think, thanks, Ash, for the question. Love working with Dallas. I think this is it's the third City and Color album that we've partnered on. And we've done some other stuff along the way as well. Matt Kelly co-produced. Matt plays in City and Color. Matt's a keyboard player, pedal steel. Matt's kind of the all things musician. He's very talented, and he co-produced it with Dallas. I wasn't part of the recording process, so much credit to them. That they beautiful songs, beautiful performances, beautiful recordings. Yeah, it was a beautiful record they brought me.
And you mixed. This is one of your
Mixed in Luna is a big part of the warm sound. It
Oh,
is
right on.
it's a very friendly and analog sounding. It's the most analog sounding DAW there is, without a doubt.
Doesn't it have built-in tape
Yes.
emulations and things like
Yeah.
that?
So yeah, so that's part of it. It's just like, it's like there's diligent work that's done to select the right tape formula, the right tape speed. I have the Dawsons automate the tape noise on and off, so the tape noise is only engaged when the audio is playing on a track, because to avoid the accumulated noise.
Right.
Because we've become very used to in the digital world of of a very low noise floor.
Yeah.
But noise in a tape machine is an essential part of a tape machine sounding like a tape machine.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I think one thing. I think the one thing that kind of comes to mind in terms of the vocal sound that Ash commented on is that I use the Valhalla reverb, the vintage verb. There is a setting in there. I want to say it's called chaotic reverb or something. Gosh, I wish I knew. I wish I was more confident in that. But it's kind of the pre-delay on it. It's like the onset of reverb is it has kind of a unique pre-delay aspect to it. I mean, of course, you can adjust the pre-delay by milliseconds, but then there's a very unique way that it blooms, that the reverb blooms, and it's very diffused, but as soon as the reverb gets an additional input, that bloom of reverb kind of goes away and clears back up. So you can have this very dramatic reverb, and that kind of blooms in between the spaces, but that doesn't step all over Dallas's beautiful voice.
Yeah.
And when I mix, this is very typical for me. I'll almost always have, and specifically in this case, it's that reverb as the kind of longer reverb, but I'll have a short reverb and a long reverb. And then I'll have a short delay and a long delay as a minimum, and I automate everything, but I also automate the effects returns. So, choruses, bigger sections, the effects are generally coming up, because I want to give the listener it's the feeling and the sound of like the band is getting louder, the energy is coming up, and these things, the environment becomes more apparent because the volume in the environment's kind of coming up. That's another thing I think that goes back to the live sound thing. We're just used to, as human beings in spaces and hearing sounds and conversing, when the intensity of someone's emotion or expression and their voice kind of comes up, you start to hear the space more. It's just kind of like this, so I use little things like that.
Well, that's something you notice too. I'm sure you've done this before, where you record a vocal, but you also record the room mic on the vocal.
Tom Waits, a lot,
yeah.
a lot of Tom Waits.
And I was really struck by the first time I did that, where it's like, oh, all the quiet stuff, it sounds like a dry vocal, but when the loud chorus comes, the compressor on the close mic is keeping it controlled, but all of a sudden the room really speaks.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Jack Douglas, who very famous for his Aerosmith records, would have, and I think they did this. They did this also with like Bowie, but they would have like 2 or 3 mics, for that very same reason.
Yeah, that's the the studio in Berlin. They made a plugin out of it where they actually put the room mics in there so that you could.
Oh, really?
Interesting. That, I think, yeah.
So that's probably the Bowie stuff could be attributed to Tony Visconti. I'm not sure, but
yeah.
But yeah, it's I mean, yeah, it can be very, very, very powerful. I mean, I'm trying to think what else I could sort of say about City and Color. I also mix that stuff very quickly. Dallas usually will come down for a long week. It's more than just like 5 days, and I just try to move through that stuff. I just try to, because it's really well recorded, and we're, my guys help me prepare the mix sessions really well. I just try to get things feeling great pretty quickly, and just get automation going, and just try to really throw myself into the mixing experience. I try to approach stuff. I try to approach all my mixing that way. It doesn't always work that way, because sometimes there's a lot of heavy lifting that needs to be done to the recordings that you're given, to kind of like get them to sort of, raise them up to where they're improved, and that you can kind of work on them that way. Yeah, just try to be very in the moment and inspired.
Stick to performance as much as possible, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that was the one that I was thinking of when I was talking about the the kind of performative aspect of pedals and things like that versus the static approach to digital tools sometimes, and hearing how those delays flowed in and out on certain lyrics in the mix, and it's so great to hear, and it's so powerful. And my experience with having that kind of performative mix comes from 15 years of mixing live music at Bonnaroo Festival, where the band is playing and I'm mixing live to 2-track in a pair of headphones. And so the only way to have the delays or the echoes or anything happen was if you did it in the moment, even the tap tempo. And I saw that and I was like, wow, this is really lost on the digital, and the not even digital, but just the automated mix technique. And I'm always trying to remind myself to bring it back somehow. So do you find that just capturing automation on those moves in Pro Tools when you're mixing is a pretty effective way to capture your performance of the mix? Or do you even do sends and returns and then just print them to a track so that it's like printed audio and it's really honestly captured? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I don't, typically if it's stuff that's being created in the mix, no, it's really just all about automation. But like, when we were speaking earlier, I do try, and when we're, recording, whatever, something, vocals, guitars, keyboards, drums, whatever it is, if there is an effect that I think that can enhance the sound, there's almost always an opportunity to kind of give it a little tweak here and there and perform with it too. And those things I do record, and those are committed.
And that's at the recording stage of something.
Yeah, it's at the recording stage. Like Kings of Leon, Only by the Night, it's like I had like probably eight buckets, or like, I had 8 sends going to, like an AMS delay or the H4000, or the DSP 4000, or, so forth into like the chamber and so forth into the plate, whatever, just all kinds of effects, it's just like, and so while we're recording, I'm turning things up, it's just like, oh, what does Caleb's guitar sound like in the Cooper Time Cube? Oh, that's really cool. Print that, it's like part of the recording. So it's just like, it's documented.
When you're doing those adjustments, like the time cube on the guitar, would you find it useful to let the band hear that in the headphones at the same time, or is Absolutely. This just for the control room? Yeah.
No, it's no. You need to and that's you need to let the band hear it, and then also a lot of times, like if you have a delay line going, you're timing it to the feel of the song, and so it's almost like an interactive. Almost like an interactive click track. It's like, because they can feel it, they can feel that response time of whatever it is you're creating, and it's feeding in, it becomes part of the music, how they're hearing it. And then, so it becomes very informative and sort of kind of helps guide the ship, if you will.
Yeah. That's what I found in Bonnaroo too, was, the effects that I was adding in real time are also going to the headphones, and it becomes it's a circular process. It's a feedback loop between the control
Absolutely.
room and the
shared information.
Floor.
Absolutely.
So the other part of the question I want to interject on the City and Color mix is, you spoke about the artist coming down and spending a long week with you. You've done this for a long time. You've got, I believe you've got, grown children now. You've kept a family, and what are some thoughts, or what are some lessons you've learned about balancing the intensity of a session and spending a week with an artist versus the balance against family life and personal time and that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, Monet, who is my wife, is just my rock. I could not she, I mean, she really, she was at home and raised the boys, and has really taken care of all of us and supported this. For quite a while there, I think our youngest son, Braden, he was probably 10 years old before I was home more than 6 months out of a year. So that means that she stayed home. She couldn't have a job because, it's like, and you routinely, I would work very late. It's like I'd be on a record project and I wouldn't come home till after people were in bed, asleep. But I would fortunately, I'm wired to be an early riser, but I got up every morning and I was at the breakfast table before anybody left to go to school. And so I made an appearance. And
nice.
As soon as I didn't have to work on Saturdays, I mean, it's like, it was very routine when I got into this. It's like you only got Sunday off.
Yeah.
And like, okay. So as soon as I could make it kind of like standard procedure that we didn't work on Saturdays. Now that's if I'm in town. Now, if I go away and I'm not with my family, then that's different. And I want to work as much as physically possible, given that, you do need to be able to step away for a day or two just to rest your mind and body so that you can go back and feel fresh and not work crazy long days. It's kind of like, it's the same thing. It's like, you don't want to get the diminishing results, but yeah, I mean, it's, so, just try to put in things like that, but, like exercising, like I've always been a proponent and of physical activity. I was an overweight kid. So I learned that habit early to kind of manage my own personal habits and realize that it's good for my mental clarity, manages my emotions, and kind of it is good for me. So like I learned early on about some balance and but just it's just like you've got to be willing for whatever you sign up for in life, whatever you want, you have to be willing to do the work that it takes to fulfill it all. It's like it's like, sure, was it hard sometimes? And do a lot of people experience these hardships and get divorces or, it's like, or however, it's just like, so, fortunately I have an amazing partner, my best friend, and to support me through it. But, yeah, it really is just kind of about, and it's about eating right. I partied pretty hard in my life, and that's part of being young. That's part of the environment sometimes, but, just realize like, don't get out over your skis because it's your career you're playing with,
I love that you just brought skiing into it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So,
and don't relax too much or your skis will wobble and you'll trip yourself up and look stupid.
Yeah. So it's just, just try, like, look, we are we're walking, I don't know, we're not a chemistry. We're like we're a chemical makeup, it's just like our hearing changes every day. Our thought processes change every day, but it depends on what you eat. Sometimes it's like you can work on something for 3 days and it sounds like you're just, this sounds so good. And then you show up on the 4th day and maybe you had too much wine or too much of some food that doesn't really quite agree with you. And it kind of throws you off and you're listening. It's like, oh my gosh, this sounds terrible. It's just like, you have to realize that it's like, you got to take care of this instrument because your ears are important. You got to protect your hearing, but it's your brain that translates it, and it's your body, your whole body has to feel it, and it's not about simply what comes out of the speakers. It's also like, it's also being connected to the energy of the people around you. It's like, it's just like, is everybody tapping their foot? It's just like, those things are real, And so being in tune with that, being a good communicator, being balanced, being respectful, all these things that I kind of have touched on through the conversation, like that's where it all is. And realize that, why are you doing this? It's like, is your motivation the right motivation? Because having all those things in the right place as much as possible allow you to be your best self. And if you can be your best self, then that gives you the opportunity to be uniquely identified in this whole journey of record making.
Do you ever feel like the time that you've spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take you years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Listen to this quote from one of our students, David. Quote, "Absolutely the most informative and helpful block of information and mentoring on the mix process that I've ever been a part of. That was like sitting behind a mix engineer for years, watching and picking up tips along the way, but condensed into a 6 to 7 hour session." Close quote. Look, I'm so confident that this will take your mixes to the next level that if you can't get a killer mix within 30 days, I'll give you a full refund, no questions asked. So if you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then go to ultimatemixingmasterclass.com and start now by checking out the free preview of the ultimate snare mixing trick. And I'll see you at the front row table of the Grammys. Cheers. So this question comes in from John Laurie, if I'm pronouncing your name right, John. Hopefully. Come On Up to the House is one of my favorite Tom Waits songs. Always been super interested in how it was recorded. There sounds like there's so much of the room and all the instruments, and it's such a live recording, but then some particular instruments sound heaps dry. I love it when I get quotes from, pretty sure that's a down under expression. And his voice has such a gorgeous ambience around it. I'm sure I've heard elsewhere how much of the album was recorded, but that song in particular has such a mood to it that's distinct from the rest of the album. I'd love to hear if there was anything special about that song, especially the harmonica solo. That thing gets me every time. That's from John Laurie.
Thanks for the question, John. Well, typically in those sessions with Tom, now we did record with bigger ensembles, like, we had Primus was in, like, on songs like Big in Japan, or we'd have multiple players. But a lot of that stuff, like Come On Up the House, would be, that would have been recorded with just, I think that was, now I'm not sure if that was Greg Cohen or Larry Taylor on bass, but it's usually just Tom and one or two other musicians that are the bed track. And we recorded that album in a very non-traditional space. It was like basically in it was on an old chicken farm, and so the recording spaces are the outbuildings, like the corn crib, or just different, like where they'd store tools or just different stuff. So like, wow, really not designed to be traditional like recording spaces.
Dusty and dirt floors and stuff.
What's that?
Dusty and dirt floors and that kind of environment.
Yeah. Concrete floor. Yeah. And there's not much separation. They're like kind of like old wood spaces, concrete block, so there's not much in the way of sound treatment or isolation. And there would be smaller spaces. Like the Waits room is probably 15 by 15 with like a 12-foot ceiling. And it's just like, wood walls and a concrete floor. But there's not like a lot of isolation from the other spaces. And sometimes we'd open the doors to their spaces, and maybe the drums would be out in another space. So, and the voice is, most of the time, Tom's vocal performance is with the recorded bed track. So whatever instrument Tom is playing and him singing, it's like, there's leakage there. Upright bass, that's you're going to hear the other instrumentation in that. Like if something's louder, like a drum kit, you kind of put that in a secondary space. That's not that there's sight line and you can hear it, but it's not so close that it's all in the piano mics, perhaps, so we capture the basic performances like that. And then things like the harmonica overdub or the harmonica part is an overdub.
Mm-hmm.
So The harmonica in particular, I know, was recorded in a more traditional studio space. So at the studio Prairie Sun, we were using Studio B. So we were in the control room, like using a Neve desk and a tape machine and stuff. There's a sound room out there. We just weren't really using it that much. But for things like Charlie Musselwhite, who would have played the harp, we we set those amps up in the traditional recording space of Studio B, and so overdubs, we did this a lot where you'd get like a very, not a simple like there wouldn't be a big ensemble. We'd get the song recorded with Tom's performance and a couple other musicians, and that would be the bed track. And then there would be, over a period of weeks, sometimes months, we'd kind of just keep putting stuff on it. We'd just try different instrumentation. I would say there's probably, on any song on Mule Variations, there's at least 10 or 15% of what we recorded instrument wise that you don't hear. I forget what song it is. Maybe it's Black Market. I don't know what song it is. There's a song, it might be Black Market Baby, where there was a Stroh violin overdub. And, we're moving and grooving. This stuff happens fast. And I printed that that Stroh violin too hot to tape. It's a very bright instrument. And you probably know this, Lidge. If you print something like that too hot to tape, even if you turn that channel off, it's kind of bled over. You can still
on
the adjacent tracks. So, it's just so that's kind of that's sort of the process of how we did things. And then those records were all mixed by hand. I say by hand because we didn't have automation on the desk. So
those were the days, man. Those were the days.
Everything was done manually. And it was just all very, very quickly and inspired. And
but team effort, team mixing, right? Like many hands on faders, or no?
Sometimes it just depended on the song and its complication. Sometimes, not a lot. I mean, Tom would help a little bit once in a while, and then Jeff, I'm drawing blank on Jeff's last name, the assistant would help a little bit, but most of it, like Oz and I were and Oz and I worked together a little bit and then independently a lot. We would just, like if you had something really complicated that where you were making a mix, where you had to make a big change, you basically would get to the point, of the mix where you were going from 24 track to half inch. You'd get to that point where the big change would have to be made, and you just stop both tape machines. You'd get the change organized, and then you just pick the mix up and print it on the half inch. And then at that transitional point, you just kind of cut between where you ended the first part and picked up the new change part, and splice the tape together.
Yeah.
It's very old school, very fun, very fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a cool way to mix too. And I'm always reminded that we could at any point, we could just do that in Pro Tools if we wanted to try it. Just print it to a track, don't do any automation, just balance sounds and edit it all together and see what you get.
Absolutely. I mean, and I remember assisting on a record for, I think it was a Chuck Prophet record before I produced a record for him.
Chuck's great.
Where, yeah, he is great. And you probably know of Chuck through Matt Brudeau, right?
Brad Jones.
Oh, from Brad Jones. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yes. Yeah. They're collaborators. But yeah, I remember they were making, rough mixes, like, all the time. And I remember the producer just sat with a bunch of the rough mixes and would kind of cut between them, and it was almost like he was game planning what the mix would be like. And he'd kind of take different approaches to the rough mix. It was kind of a cool, informative process. And this is what I would say to young record makers, or new record makers. Make a rough mix, and don't just have a static balance. Like, make it an experience. Like, when you get done tracking, try to put your hands on some faders, even if it's just the virtual mouse fader, and do some automation. get a sense of the balance and the interplay in there, and sort of like be teaching yourself as you go towards the finished product what it feels like to mix that song. Not only will it inform you about like perhaps what you should be doing to complete the recording, but it will give you an experience that you can really plug into the finished product when you mix it. That's also something that I learned along the way that I have found to be very valuable. The experience that I kind of kept for myself, and that I think is also very valuable to share.
I think that's wise. And I'll just add to that, Rockstars, print each of those rough mixes, as Jacquire's suggesting, and then do a save as, so that you have a carefully stored version of that session that matches that rough mix with the same name, so that later, if you want to go back and find out what you did or find that mix, you can open up that session still.
Yeah, that's excellent advice.
Okay, this question comes in from Charles Root III, aka our buddy Chaz Root. Does Jacquire have any memories he can share about the song Eyeball Kid from the Tom Waits album Mule Variations? There's such a wonderful sonic tapestry of ear candy backing Tom's gritty vocals. I just love that image, a tapestry of candy hanging down from the wall there.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like the, is that a kalimba or a mbira that I hear in there? It almost sounds like the backing tracks were sequenced by cutting tape or with a sampler. Super nice work by all involved.
Oh, thanks. No, what happened, that was Greg. So Greg Cohen was up, Greg Cohen and Tom were in the studio that day, and we were, I forget, I think Tom was playing guitar, I think what Tom, and Greg would have been on the bass, and Tom wasn't feeling very inspired by the way it was going. And this would happen often, he kind of, and Tom didn't play songs a lot, he wouldn't really show them to the other musicians, and he wouldn't run through them a bunch. It's like, it was either happening or it wasn't. And with Eyeball Kid, we had probably two or three kind of attempts at trying to find this thing with that instrumentation that I just mentioned. But it wasn't really feeling right. So Tom just felt inspired to go into the corn room, or I forget what's the exact name, but anyways, there's this big kind of echoey room at Prairie Sun that was kind of in that same building adjacent to the Waits room, and they all got names. In there was also recorded in the same space and kind of in a similar fashion, but a completely different vibe. So, Tom got up from the guitar, and so you'd have to run down there and move microphones and move the vocal mic and get it over there. But the Eyeball Kid started basically as just Tom and Greg playing like sticks and banging on stuff and kind of a hodgepodge of, like there was the guts of a piano, just the harp of a piano in there that Tom had found. Somebody had thrown it away in their front yard. This beat up old busted piano, and he kind of rescued it and took the harp out of it, and so there was that in there, and just all this stuff, just a collection of, instruments and non-instruments and found instruments and created instruments. And so he and Greg just went in there, and they kind of got down on the floor and put the vocal mic, and they just kind of played. They just kind of played percussion and kind of musical like things while Tom did the vocal, and then we layered overdubs on it, and that's kind of how that happened and came to be. Just super, super cool.
That's fun. This podcast is proud to present Recording Studio Rockstars Academy. Are you ready to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level and make your best record ever? Then visit the Academy to find the course that's right for you. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Then check out Rockstars of Drums to learn how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a professional Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Or if you're ready to start mastering your own records at home, then check out Rockstars of Mastering, where I walk you through exactly how I master my own records using nothing but plugins. Plus, I take you into a world-class mastering studio, Sterling Sound, to meet with Ryan Smith and hear how he professionally mastered my record, Skadoosh, for release to streaming platforms. That's the music you hear on this podcast, Rockstars. And if mixing is your focus, then check out my free mixing course, Mix Master Bundle, where I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins in Pro Tools. Plus, you get a look at how I recorded everything in my studio and multi-track downloads for you to practice mixing and even upload to your website if you want. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to recordingstudiorockstars.com/academy to get started now. Percussion is one of the moments in a record making where I feel like you get a chance to create something that's really unique. Yeah. Sonically and groove wise and all that.
And primal.
For each record.
And very primal.
And there's so much more than just shaker and tambourine, Rockstars.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, I guess, the kalimba question. I don't remember specifically if what that sound may be that Chaz is referring to, but there's certainly lots of log drums and stuff that were used as well. Marimba, log drum. There's also, Tom has Chamberlins and Mellotrons. So there's sometimes, I don't remember putting those on Eyeball Kid, but certainly there's a big collection of very interesting things, and also one of the things that Tom had me do is I was really proficient, like we were talking about before, with Pro Tools and samplers and stuff. Is we would take some like a shell from like a howitzer, like ammunition, like an empty shell, but it's pretty big. It's like as big as a milk jug, and it's like he would sing in it or would tap on it, and we would record these things and make samples out of them so that he could then play them on a keyboard sometimes.
Yeah, that's fun. That stuff's so much easier to do today. There's a really fun iPhone app called Koala where you can just go around the house sampling things with just a push of a button, and it sounds great.
No, it was something else back then.
It was harder back then. Yeah.
Way harder.
Okay, very quick one from Rod Short. Audience perspective or drummer's perspective?
Audience.
All right, there you go. Jacquire, it's been such a pleasure to hang out with you on the podcast. I have one closing question I ask all our guests before we sign off, and it is hypothetical, and we're going to take the Wayback Studio machine and you go back in time to find young Jacquire. Maybe you're sprinting across the lawn to get to the corn crib, or maybe it's earlier than that, and you're up all night trying to figure out how to get this sampler to play back the loops, the vinyl loops. But you go back in time and you find yourself and you say, listen, dude, I want to come back and give you this one bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing that you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice would you go back and give yourself if you could?
Always endeavor to make it work. Don't there are no rules. And yeah, it's just like always, it took me a little bit of time to figure that out. It's just like, and I know that's kind of a broad statement, but it's like, if something's not working, don't let that block. Like if a piece of equipment is not working or your idea isn't working, don't let that blockage derail the creative process, because that's where the magic is. Always be willing to go with inspiration. Don't allow yourself to become frustrated or distracted by what is not going your way. Always focus, and this is, you could say that about life, but like, in terms of like technology and you're learning your way. I mean, we all start out very idealistic, and we have to really trust what our ears are telling us, and we're learning the equipment. Don't let a blockage like that. Don't let that be the thing that you hyper focus on and let it deter or ruin the session, because it wasn't until I was making this a record with the band Switchfoot that I let. I didn't hear. We were using like a Neve Melbourne console, and we were at a studio that I wasn't familiar with, and there was a quality of the distortion that I wasn't picking up. We were recording heavy, sort of distorted guitars, and I didn't hear the headroom of the little Neve Melbourne collapsing, and it kind of created this little grainy, sometimes little poppy, like little pop sounds. Popping sounds that in the guitar tracks, and I kind of freaked out about that. We recorded great performances and the sounds were super cool, and I let that so when I became aware of it, I let that awareness skew my judgment, and I kind of asked and insisted that we re-record all the guitars. The performances never felt as good. I mean, they worked. I mean, the record went on to be successful, but I realized I sacrificed something. And although that's not exactly what I'm talking about, I think that experience really made me realize that what's most, and also just like all the work with Tom Waits, it's like what's the most important is the emotion. Is the emotion there? Because is the emotion and the performance there? Because that's what makes something sound cool, and I think of like the band MC5. They had some of the worst sounding records, right? But they are regarded as one of the greatest influential rock and roll bands of all time, and that's because you felt the energy, and so that makes sense. It's like that's what I would say to the younger Jacquire is like, don't let your fears and ignorance and your idea of what is ideal and that the technology is the power stand in the way of creativity. And yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. And the thought of something going wrong in a session is you learn that that's not an exception to the rule. That is literally every single session. Something always goes wrong.
Something always goes wrong. And you can learn to adapt and accept it and work around it, or you can let it sink the ship.
Yep. The workaround is the single most important skill, I think, for us.
You're right. I 100% agree. Make it work. And the make it work phrase, I get it from my friend Reed Shippen, because he doesn't do it anymore. But for the longest time, that was part of his email signature.
Make it work.
Make it work. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, dude, what a pleasure hanging out with you. Thank you again. How can the rock stars find you? Where would you like them to go to check out more about you and about your work? What if they're ready to make their next hit record?
Well, I mean, I try to pay attention. I'm not as active as I have been, but Instagram is a good spot to kind of sort of keep an eye on what I'm doing. My website, I'm in the process of fixing my contact on the website. There's a link in the news section. Don't use that one. Use the actual proper contact link on my website. Be
fixed by the time this comes out.
Yeah, let's hope. It's not a priority. So, and I got so much other stuff going on. And it's like my Wikipedia is decent. My website's pretty good. Instagram. And
yeah, a lot of good pictures of the tropics on Instagram, I noticed.
Yeah, well, it's like my wife and I have been purchasing some property down in the Bahamas, and so I will have a studio down there in the future too.
I felt like I was hearing some island influence on the K Club stuff I was listening to,
absolutely,
which was cool.
100%.
Well, dude, thank you again for hanging with us, man. It's a pleasure. It was a pleasure to just get to know you better. And it was a lot of fun to play a game of golf with you. So thanks for hanging with us, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Lidge, for having me on. And I really enjoyed that round of golf. And it was an honor to be here. Thank you so much. It was a really good time, and I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
And Rockstars, thanks for listening, and thanks for sending in your questions. Jacquire, I look forward to seeing you around the studio, dude.
Later, man.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our amazing sponsors who help make this episode possible: Lewitt, Grace Design, Adam Audio, Native Instruments, and Isotope. And remember, at isotope.com and nativeinstruments.com, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plug-in purchase. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, then please check out our sponsors using the links in our show notes below, because it's a great way to help support this show. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio because they're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars: Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, and Liz Hulitskaya. Thanks so much for listening, Rockstars, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.